So, today we're talking about living outside our comfort zones. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I actually think we've forgotten what it is to actually be human. We've come to this weird idea that staying the same is right. You know the word stasis? We talk about homeostasis. Well, stasis is this way of being that doesn't change. And it's like we were taught that, okay, you spend the first part of your life figuring out what your ideal life is. And then you achieve that, and then you stay there. And the better you can stay there in that ideal way of life, the more successful you are, right? If I can prolong this stasis for the rest, of my last 40 years or 50 years, then I have really achieved something because I've figured out the best and I'm living it. That's what I'm doing. And I don't think that's true. And this is just my perception. I believe that human beings are meant to be in a state of perpetual growth. I don't think we're ever supposed to stop growing. I think we're meant to continue to expand and renew ourselves and grow every day of our life till the final moment when it's time to pass on and transition to the next adventure. Why would we ever stop expanding? Why would we ever stop growing? And so we start to think, we start to demonize change. We start to demonize growth, right? It's like, I change because I really screwed up, or I'm in pain, therefore I have to fix this. Or people think, so you're going to a psychiatrist or a counselor, or you're doing yoga because you want to improve yourself, right? You want to make yourself better because there's something wrong with who you are now, right? So we connect change with, if I'm changing, there must be something wrong with me right now. And so we push back on any kind of change. We push back on any kind of personal growth because it's like we don't want to admit there's something wrong with us, which isn't true. It's just, that's what we think, right? That's why we change. That's why we go for help. That's why we learn. That's why we do that, right? Because it means we're not enough right now. And this is deeply ingrained in our programming, in our society, that we're never enough. We always have to get bigger. We always have to get better. And there's something inside of us that says that that's not true either. I'm not growing because I'm not enough. I'm growing because I'm alive. Right? That's like looking at a sapling and thinking there's something wrong with the sapling because it wants to grow into a tree. Or looking at a full-grown tree and thinking there's something wrong with it, that it grew new branches. That's crazy. It's called growth. It's called being alive. It's called stretching up to the sun and receiving the rain and the air and the beauty and the nutrients out of the soil and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I believe that's what we're meant to do as humans. I don't think we're meant to find stasis and stay there until we die. Because then I don't really understand why we're here. If we're not exploring, if we're not pondering new ideas and having new experiences and having new adventures, whether those adventures are out there or they're in our own personal growth. So I went back to university about 10 years after I graduated. I had first gone to school for mathematics, and then and then after that I got married and I had the breast lumps. And when I had my healing with all of that and my massive dark nights of the soul, if you can read in my book, What If You Could Skip the Cancer? That's the whole story. People started coming to me for counseling. And I was feeling kind of weird about that, thinking, okay, my math degree is really not, it's really not cutting the mustard on this. I thought I should go back to school and study psychology. So about 10 years after I graduated, I went back to university to study psychology. And I remember sitting in, I don't know whether it was Psych 101 or whether it was, I don't know what it was, but they were teaching about myelination. And myelination is the process of gray matter in our brain turning into white matter. So when we're born, our brain is all gray matter. If you imagine a raw electrical wire, has no coating, no nothing, it's just a bare electrical wire. Then after we're born, we start to go ba, ba, la, da, da, ba, 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 ba. And we start to realize, whoa, I can control these weird sounds and I can hear stuff. That's interesting. So then this part of the brain, the temporal lobe, starts to myelinate. As we learn something new about the world, new about our own abilities, we start to realize, whoa, I can do this. And every time a neuron realizes something and learns something, a white myelin sheath is created over that bare wire. And now that's white matter. So when a baby first starts doing that, this part of the brain starts to myelinate and it starts to become white matter. And then the baby starts to kick and push and feel its fingers. And then the occipital lobe back here, it starts to myelinate because the baby starts to go, oh, and it starts to learn that, oh, I have a hand and I can control the hand. And so this is what happens. The brain keeps myelinating every time it learns something new. And anyway, so this goes on and they go through the whole, and then the prefrontal cortex, it starts myelinating at age 10 and it, continues on. So I'm sitting there and the professor says, now most myelination ends around the age 19. And then from then on, your brain has the same balance of gray matter and white matter for the rest of your life. And I'm sitting there like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why would the brain just randomly stop myelinating at age 19? Like, I was so that annoying mature student that questioned everything. And so anyway, I actually started doing a lot of research about myelination and learning and stuff. And had I continued that degree, I didn't. I only lasted a couple years before I found it to be quite useless. But that's a whole other story. I did a lot of research and I thought, you know what, if I was to actually complete the doctorate or complete a thesis, I was going to actually do an experiment using myelination. Because my theory, my premise was that the reason people stop myelinating, I didn't think the professor wasn't wrong, but it didn't make any sense to me that this was a proper human progression. And my premise was that after high school, we often don't actually learn anything new again. Even if we go to university or college, we often build upon what we're already good at. So I might, if I'm really good at math and I go to university and study math, there might be some marginal myelination happening, but not the same as, when you first start to play an instrument and you sit down, like I remember taking piano lessons and I'm sitting there and you're like, and they're like, okay, do this. And you're like, and you can tell that whatever the nerve is that is controlling this finger on this, it's not myelinated yet because I can't do it, right? I'm like, I can't make the finger do it. But so you kind of do this and it hurts your brain, right? It's like, oh, this is so hard. And then you go and sleep. And while you're sleeping, that myelinates. And the next time you sit down in front of the piano, you go, oh yeah, okay, got it. And then you have to do the next thing and it's like, oh, this is so hard in my brain. And then you go to sleep and you come back and you've myelinated. How often do we actually learn like that outside of our comfort zone? Like when I used to teach ballroom dance and Latin dance to people, as adults, we're terrible for this. That people would come in and after one class, they would just give up. Because like, well, I can't do it. I'm terrible at dancing. I don't have any rhythm. I can't do it. After one class, it's like we don't even allow for myelination. We actually assume stasis. We assume that if I can't do it now, I'm never going to be able to do it. Whereas if that was a 6-year-old child, we don't assume stasis. We assume growth. We assume that that child will learn. And that child will go into that dance class and be terrible for years. And nobody cares. Because we assume growth. We assume adventure. We assume exposure. We assume this. But as adults, if it hurts our brain and we feel like we're going to look stupid, we just stop. You know, how many times do we start an exercise regimen? And if we don't do it 2 days in a row, we just, oh, forget it. You know what? That's just, I can't do it. That's just me. I just have to accept me. Like we assume stasis constantly. So years ago, I read a book called The High School Reunion Diet. And it's a hilarious book. It's a really good book. It was written by a plastic surgeon. And he had this, you know, he worked in this big clinic. And one day all the surgeons were sitting down talking, and they were talking about the number one reason that people first come to them for Botox treatments. And the number one reason was because there was a high school reunion coming up. So people want to look younger. They want to look like they're just, you know, all that, right? And the book became a book about diet. It became a book about eating, about just really actually in the end it was just about eating natural food and it's all the same stuff that we all know. But it was a really interesting book. And one of the things they talked about, which I want to share with you, is they talked about this comfort zone, this mushy reality that many of us live in, right? So imagine your own comfort zone. Imagine this sort of sphere of comfort that, you know, we probably could do better. And I don't mean better like according to society. I mean better for us. I mean, what's my ideal? You know, what are the things that I'm doing that even I know I shouldn't be doing? And I don't mean even should like society. I mean me personally, what's in line with my truth, my mission, why I'm here on the planet, right? So we kind of live in this mushy comfort zone, right? Which is okay. And we swim in that comfort zone for a long time until something goes wrong. And then all of a sudden we're in pain, right? So when I lived on the farm, I married a farmer out of university the first time. And so I was a dairy farmer for like 17 years, or a dairy farmer's wife, who also milked the cows and drove tractors. But, and so when I was on the farm, I actually was quite depressed, and I would often gain a lot of weight. And it was so interesting because I kind of had this mushy area in between, right? I never really kind of achieved my ideal, like real comfortable fitness, like what I really would have. I also had really bad body dysmorphia, so I probably would have thought that whatever my ideal wasn't actually my ideal. It was some weird photoshopped version of somebody. But anyway, so I lived in this thing, and then every so often I would really gain weight. And there was this point, this weight that I would get to when suddenly my body felt awful. Like I just, you know, I would kind of get back rolls and my chin would just, everything would just, and I just felt so uncomfortable in my body. I just couldn't stand to be in my body. And then I was like, that's it. I'm going on a diet, right? There's always that pain point that you're like, that's it. I can't take it anymore. So this guy's theory was, here's the comfort zone and here's the pain point. So here's me on the farm and I've hit this pain point. It's like, that's it. And I have all this wisdom inside of me. I know how to lose the weight. I know how to exercise. I know how to do this. I'm going to do this, right? So I go and I do the diet. So how long do I stay on the diet? I stay on the diet until I get into the comfort zone. So maybe I lose 10 pounds. Maybe I lose 15 pounds. Maybe I lose 5 pounds. And now I'm no longer in pain. I feel a little bit better about myself, but now I'm in the mushy comfort zone. And in the mushy comfort zone, there's no incentive to keep going. So I go off the diet and I float around in the comfort zone for a while until a year later, I start going, and I go on another diet until I get in the comfort zone. And then I stop again. And it's the same with everything. It could be meditation. Maybe we're completely stressed out and our minds are going at 1,000,000 miles an hour and we're having, anxiety attacks and we're having all these issues. And then someone says, you know what? Try meditating every day. It's like, and you're like, you know what? I'll try it. I'll try anything because I can't live like this any longer. So we actually do the meditation, or we join the yoga class, or we join the meditation circle, or whatever. And we do the thing, and we start to realize that, wow, I'm really feeling better. Whew. Yeah, I'm really feeling better. And then what happens as soon as we start feeling a little bit better? Oh, it's meditation class night. Oh, but there's this thing and, I got to go to that. And so then I skip the class and I don't do it anymore. Or I just get busy and then I get sick. And then, you know what I mean? Something happens. And then all of a sudden our pendulum swings back to anxiety again. Right? So it's a really interesting thing, this deadly comfort zone. So then for me, it was about 2015, 2016. I don't know why, but for some reason my body just started dropping weight. It's a whole weird story, but it just started dropping weight and I became super skinny. If you ever see videos that I made back in that time, some of them are on YouTube and stuff for my online courses, I'm so thin. I am literally just bones. There's nothing to me. But the weird thing is, when I was that thin, I could feel any extra pound come on, let's say I was over here, I was unhealthy and stuff, but let's say in the land of the body weight thing, I was over here, suddenly I could feel the little weight coming on and I could feel myself heading in to this comfort zone. And then I would go, whoa, back up. And I would come back here. The incentive to feel this way was stronger. This was the incentive. Over here, it's the pain that's the incentive to come this way. When we're on this side, the incentive is, I like the way I feel right now. It's like, let's say, for example, you stick with the meditation. You stick with the yoga, whatever it is that is actually healing your nervous system. It's actually sewing you up and you're actually feeling good. And you actually continue practicing and you continue going through the whole thing and you continue all the way through the comfort zone. And you actually get to this space over here where you feel fantastic. You actually feel like you. No anxiety, no worries. You're actually calm. This is the most amazing incentive, to stay there. It's like a positive incentive as opposed to the negative incentive. So it's a really interesting thing to ponder this. When we think about living on the edge of our comfort zone, right? That it's no, let's not play in the comfort zone. What if we actually stayed in a state of constant growth? And not in a bad way. These are just weird examples and they're very linear. But what if we always said, you know what? I always want to be moving towards the real me, or I want to be expanding who the real me is. What if we always lived there? What if we didn't have to wait for pain? What if we didn't identify change with pain? That we actually identified change with feeling great, feeling more ourselves, feeling more expansive. I know for me, when I actually take the time to sit and read a book, it expands me in 1,000 ways. It doesn't just expand my knowledge. It connects with something deep inside of me that says, yes, this is why you're here, right? This is who you are. You love this. I read a book and it's all I can do to read the book because I'm taking so many notes. I'm so entertained by what I'm reading. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. And suddenly it's spawning new courses and articles and videos and this and that and talks and everything. It's all I can do to read a book because it literally expands everything in my whole being. And yet when I get busy, reading's the first thing that goes. It's a fascinating thing to say, but you love reading. So why don't we read? Recently, so this year, for me, one of my big goals is actually to really be in my body. I can really tend to be in my head, kind of be lost in the spiritual land and forget I have a body altogether. Like I just forget. And so if I start an exercise regime, I just wake up one day and realize, oh man, 4 weeks ago I started walking every day. I've totally forgotten because my mind was like on another planet or something. And at the turn of 2022, the kind of message inside was, you know what? Let's get in our body. Let's be in her. Let's actually create that beautiful connection to my physical self. Let's go there. This is outside my comfort zone. My comfort zone is teaching, writing, creating. That's my comfort zone. That I love that stuff. And everything else can fall away as long as I'm doing that. But to actually have a daily discipline, and I don't mean discipline like discipline, I mean discipline like a worship, a disciple, like to expand in something I love. That's tough for me physically. If I'm teaching or something, I'll always be there. But to show up for me physically, not so much. So luckily, I was sitting chatting with my son the other day, and for anyone who's new, my son's like 26, and we were chatting about this, and we're both the same. Like we both just, we were just not disciplined in that way. And he says, well, when did you used to be disciplined in this? Because I used to run a lot. Like I used to be a barefoot runner. And I said, well, I had a friend that used to pick me up at 6:30 every morning, or 3 times a week at 6:30. And we would go running. And he says, well, why don't I do that? Why don't I come over at 6:30? So my son and I have started this 6:30 a.m. regime of running, doing kind of animal flow exercises, these things. And it's really, really cool. But it means I have to wake up at 5:30 personally to kind of have my time before he comes over and all that kind of thing. And it's so interesting because it's so outside my comfort zone. But the cool thing is, when we're actually moving towards something exciting about ourselves or something that's possible within us, so many things have to change. So suddenly how I go to sleep at night has to change, And the great thing is, I'm actually having to put wisdom in place that I will sometimes teach and not live. And that drives me crazy. And that was the other thing that really hit me in the new year this year was, what are the things that I know to be true, but I'm not living? Like, what are those things? We do that, especially like I'm a list maker. And sometimes when we make lists, we think that because I've put it on the list, it's practically done, right? Sometimes we're like that about what we believe. We have all these theories and we've read all these books and we've done all these courses and we've done all these things and we are so full of great ideas. And because we know them and because they're stored here, it's the same issue as the list problem, that on some level we think we've done it. It's like, no. Until we actually put it in place, until we actually try to do it, we don't know anything. It's nothing more than a theory until it's experienced. It reminds me of the Buddha. The Buddha used to say, don't believe me. Don't believe something just because you're taught it. Go out in the world, try it, do it, live it. Then you'll know. It will no longer be a belief or something you just learned. You'll simply know it as truth. So in my closet, I have these little stickies. And on every sticky are these little truths that I genuinely believe, but for whatever reason, manifesting them is outside my comfort zone. So I don't do them. But they sit there inside of me, and it's really interesting because when we have a truth, there's something about life that we believe to be true, but we're not doing it, there becomes this weird inner battle. It's like we almost have this unconscious imposter syndrome going on. And we're almost a little afraid for people to get too close to us. Because if they get too close, they're going to realize that I don't actually practice all that I preach. Right? So it's a really fun game because I believe that these ideas that we have, these things that resonate as truth that we've learned or read or witnessed in other people, I believe that they are the clues to the journey. Like they're the breadcrumbs of our path. They're not there to beat ourselves up with, because we haven't achieved them or something. They're what we're meant to move towards, and so somehow we pick one of them and we say, okay, you know what? I know this is outside my comfort zone, but I'm going to do this one thing. I'm going to try it and see what happens. And then the cool thing is the world sort of conspires to help you out, right? Like it was the same thing. Like before I was even talking to my son, the reason I was talking to him was because I had decided that I was going to do this GMB program. And GMB, it stands for something like gold medal bodies. I was talking about it in an earlier class, and everyone was coming up with other names for it, like gorilla, monkey, baboon or something, because it's all based on animal exercises and like using your body weight to exercise and things. It's so cool. I bought this course, their Elements course, back in 2017 when I lived in Toronto. And I never got past like the third class. So I had already decided at the turn of 2022 that I was going to complete the GMB Elements program. There's like 40 classes and I was going to do it. I was going to do it every other day. This is what it is, and I'm going to do it. It's outside my comfort zone, but whatever it is, whatever I have to massage in my life and shift and change, I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to do it. And of course, it was talking about that stimulated the conversation with my son. And I also have this weird thing in my head, like about running, because I'm not a naturally light person. Like I'm not built like a gazelle. Like I have iron bones. So running is a really strange thing for me to like to do. So that's why I run barefoot, because it's easier on the joints and everything. And and so we get talking about it, and he's like, well, you know what? Let's just alternate. Let's run every other day, and we'll do the GMB every other day, and we'll rest on Sundays. And I can feel this little thing inside of me like, oh no, like we're really going to do it? Like, like that thing, like I'm really good at talking, but am I really going to do it? Oh no. So we've been doing it, and it's really nice to kind of have a buddy to almost get through that comfort zone, right? Like it's some way to kind of get through to the other side where you go, wow, it really does feel great to feel great. So it's a really interesting thing, like personally, to ponder this for everybody. So what are the little things in your mind that niggle, that say, you want to do this, you want, like, for example, for me, I have this thing that I desperately want to be able to do a handstand, like a freestanding handstand. And this sounds very shallow or weird or fitness oriented or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't seem like an important goal. But to simply accomplish a handstand for me requires about 50 other things to change. Right? I'm kind of like a T-Rex. I think my upper body's kind of atrophied. I don't really have any upper body strength. So it requires so many things to change. And for me to say practice the GMB, then you know what? Then I go to bed earlier. And in order to go to bed earlier, to wake up earlier, I'm going to turn off my screens earlier so that I can actually read. So what's going to happen now? I'm going to go to bed earlier and I read in bed instead of, scrolling TikTok or something. And I'm all of a sudden getting better sleep. And then all of a sudden I'm clearer in the day. And all of a sudden I'm eating a little bit better because I'm a lot more connected to my body. And I'm a lot more connected to my joints, like my knees. I wrecked one of my knees playing baseball a long time ago. And so I have this one knee that likes to flare up. Well, the more active I am, the more kind of under pressure it is. And so when it's more under pressure like this, because it's working and chewing and, ligaments are learning and growing and healing, I'm more aware of the food I eat. Because as soon as I eat something, or let's say I, binge out on too much sugar or something, I wake up in the morning and I try to go for a run and my knees are killing me, right? Because that sugar just pools in the joints, right? But I wouldn't know that if I wasn't doing the running or I wasn't doing the GMB. So all of a sudden, the simple desire to be able to do a handstand creates this ripple effect in my entire life in all the best ways. I'm reading more, I get better sleep, I'm happier, I'm clearer, I feel good in my body, I actually have connection in my body. It's like, it's really interesting and life becomes exciting again, right? Because this is another really big thing. A few classes ago, someone asked about boredom. Why do we get bored? And my sense is the number one reason we get bored is this weird idea that stasis is the goal. It's almost like connecting with that inner child again and saying, what would your inner child want to do today? Maybe your inner child wants to go and, find butterflies. Or it wants to go and build sandcastles. Or it wants to paint a picture. Or it wants to take a pretty picture. Or it wants to learn an instrument. Or it wants to learn Spanish. Like there's no reason to be bored unless we have some idea that stasis is an answer, or we're afraid to get outside our comfort zone and try that thing. Wayne Dyer used to say that as long as your fingernails are growing, you're alive. As long as your fingernails are growing, you are connected to source energy and you are still growing and expanding as a human. And that's really interesting. That as long as we're alive, there are ideas. There are things that we'd probably love to do. But maybe there's fears. Maybe there's things, or maybe we're in that comfort zone and we're so stuck in inertia. We're waiting for pain to come because historically it's only when we're in pain that we change. But that's just an idea. What if we don't have to wait for pain? What if we don't have to wait for that? What if we can actually go towards the light instead? What if we can go towards amazing growth and possibility? I was reading Thoreau. I was really into Thoreau a while ago. And Henry David Thoreau. And he wrote Walden. I don't know whether it's called Walden's Pond or just Walden. But anyway, it was written like a century or so ago or longer. And he had this whole thing that, how they talk about how humans, we only use like 10% of our brain. The truth is, I actually don't think we use more than 10% of our capacity as humans. Like personally for me, I don't even know if I've hit 1% of the capacity of being a human. Like I think I'm kind of barely sentient. Like I think that the expansion that's possible as a human, like there's no ceiling on it, right? And this is very exciting. It's very exciting to get out of the way, get my limitations out of the way and actually see what's possible in this incredible opportunity of incarnation here on earth. And that's why the physical part for me is interesting because that's my weakest link. That's my limitation. That's my place where I see my struggles. So if I can get through the comfort zone issue with my physical body Because I'm not doing this because I'm in pain. I'm not doing this because I can't do what I want to do physically. I'm doing this because I just have this weird feeling that a lot more is possible physically. And if I can't even do it physically, I probably can't do it in the realms that I'm actually wanting to go into. So Thoreau was really interesting, and his perception was that people, he always said men, right? Everything was about men, but that men were so obsessed with work and toiling and society's trappings that we never actually pursued what it was to be human, which is why he went to Walden Pond, which was a property of, who was that? It's left me. Anyway, another famous philosopher who was a friend of his, Emerson. Was it Emerson? Anyway, and he went and he stayed and he built a little cabin on the edge of this pond. And his intention, Emerson, to prove that we work for a ridiculous idea. That half the stuff we do for work is absolutely, it's of no value to ourselves, to society, to anybody, right? Buckminster Fuller used to talk about this all the time, that the majority of work that people do doesn't add a single thing to society. It's just kind of turning the wheels. And this was Thoreau's premise, was that if we actually simply worked to survive, we'd barely have to work. So he built this little shack. He grew a few vegetables. He did a few odd jobs in town to make a little bit of money to buy a few things that he couldn't grow. And he did this experiment, and I think it was called Walden or Walden's Pond. And he actually itemizes exactly economically. I think he's got a whole chapter called Economics, and he tells you exactly what he spent in the year. And his whole intention wasn't just to be a jerk or to prove to people that they're wasting their lives, but he was just saying, if we decrease this obsession with work and exhaustion, then we can actually expand as humans. We have more than enough time to expand as humans if we get rid of all the things that just waste our time. Every so often I'll go off of all social media. I did this about a year ago. I deleted my Facebook, Instagram, everything, LinkedIn, everything. Every single social media thing was gone. And the most interesting thing that came of it was how much free time I had. And not just free time because I wasn't scrolling or I wasn't posting or I wasn't, because I tend to create content if I'm on social media. So it wasn't just that. But I also wasn't arguing with people in my brain, right? Because you read something and you go, what? And then you're having a conversation with someone you don't even know in your head for the next 3 hours. And you might even then tell a friend. And then so I had all these weird thoughts rolling through my mind when I was on social media. And then all of a sudden it was gone. And the space in my mind was amazing. It was amazing. There was room for expansion suddenly. It's really, really, really interesting when we imagine that we really are on an expansive adventure here. Why would we ever stay in our comfort zone, right? When so many more things are possible. So thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you again.